I went one summer, when I was still very young, 3-4 years old, to my grandmother's village. The village is located 100 kilometers from Siktivka and a little closer to Ust-Kulam, 7 kilometers from the nearest large village. There were at most 10-15 houses, and at least half of them were empty. It is located, in fact, in the forest on a small clearing. The residents are old grandmothers, old alcoholics, and their children, also alcoholics. Almost everyone has some kind of animal. My grandmother liked to drink, and every evening when she drank, she told me to close the shutters at night if she didn't close them. I regularly closed them every night, went to bed and slept peacefully until morning. Then I once asked my grandmother why I was actually closing them. To which he received the answer, "You're still small, you won't understand." Well, after that, out of spite, I didn't close it. Something strange happened that night. At first I woke up from some strange feeling, as if my stomach was clenching with fear, but there was no fear. Then I realized that someone was walking past the windows in the garden, looking into the windows and tapping the glass softly with his fingernail. I didn't understand what was going on at all. I was going to get up, go closer to the window and look, but I heard a loud whisper from the grandmother's side of the bed. "Don't get up." Something walked along the walls, knocked on the windows, knocked on the walls, and when it started to get light, it safely left. In the morning I got a slap from my grandmother for not closing the shutters. She explained that it was a certain guardian of the forest in which this village is located, or something similar, who came. Of course, I've always closed the shutters since then. The second story is from the vicinity of the same village. We went to rest there with the whole family. I am no longer 3 years old, but 5 years old. I still remember that night guest, but somehow I am not afraid, because I already consider myself an adult and brave, not like a year and a half ago. My father took me fishing for a morning bite. At 4 o'clock we left the house. It's already getting light outside, the first rays of the sun, the birds are singing. There were 3 places for fishing. A shallow lake in which practically nothing was found, but I liked it there, because there are a lot of frogs and toads of huge size in the water, a small river too, but it was possible to catch all kinds of perch and generally bigger fish than in a shallow lake, and another lake, dark, deep and large, at least, it seemed so to me then. We went to that big lake. To walk to it for about an hour. On the way you pass through one completely abandoned village even smaller than the one where my grandmother lived, 5 houses and 2 sheds, plus a small 2-story barracks. My father, when he quarreled with my mother, always took me away, and we went there. We fried kebabs, he drank vodka, and I Dutchess. This village was not even on a clearing, the houses were built directly between the trees. And so my father and I came to the lake, on the other side of which there were 3 more houses, but only one was clearly visible, the rest were only partially visible from behind the trees. My father and I have never been there, because my grandmother said that it was, they say, a cursed place where you don't have to be alive. Quote, and then she said something quietly to her father about fishing on that lake, profusely using profanity and calling him all sorts of names for the fact that he decided to fish there at all. But my father was an atheist, realist, communist, and didn't believe in any devilry. As a result, he made an agreement with his grandmother, learned a couple of things from her, forcibly gave her a couple of promises, and we went. We sit fishing, my father watches the float, sipping beer, I just look at the water, at the house, which is visible behind the trees on the other side of the lake, I catch butterflies, and generally have fun as much as I can, because fishing itself has never tempted me and still does not. I run past my father, and suddenly he grabs my hand, sits me down next to him, points towards the house and says, I can't see well, he was already 46 years old at that time, a welder all his life, look, is someone walking there? I look there carefully, and for a long time, I'm already starting to think that Dad is playing me, but then I see that someone leaves the house, goes deep into the forest, then returns with someone else. And both go into the house. For some reason, this sight struck me with fear right up to my heels. The houses that stand on the other side have been abandoned for a long time. The one that can be seen normally has a partially collapsed roof, the windows are knocked out, almost all of it is covered with moss, and there are at least 2 people walking there. It is unlikely that drug addicts and alcoholics, because if there are drug addicts, then everyone knows about them, and in general, local people bypass those houses a few kilometers away. The father also turned pale, sits and looks there, then says, let's get together quietly and go home. He is sitting, winding the fishing line quietly. I put everything in my backpack that I got, beer, a thermos of tea, bags of sandwiches. Then I look 3. I don't even know what to call them, are looking at us from the other side of the lake. In general, 3 white and smooth, I mean, there are no hair, nipples, nails and other reliefs of an ordinary body. Creatures look directly at us. Absolutely motionless, which scares even more. They stand just like mannequins from a store. In principle, they even look similar in shape, except for the eyes, which stood out very much against the white background of their skin. They stood and looked at us for a couple of minutes, then began to walk around the lake, two on one side, the third on the other. They moved at an ordinary walking pace. It's like I've been nailed to the spot. My father grabbed me by the collar and dragged me into the forest. The backpack and fishing rod were left there on the shore. In general, we returned home safely. The grandmother then cursed my father for a long time because he did not believe her, and then my father drank black for a week. And we never came back for the fishing rod and backpack.